This is This Week in Sports, only on WFTU, Riverhead.
Lenny a shot, directed on goal. Score! Tavares! Step on! In overtime, the Rangers move on to Tampa.
Big round, up in the air. It's caught by Amaro. Touchdown, Jets.
Beckham, one-handed catch. How in the world?
Oh, my goodness. That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
High fly ball, deep right. Martinez back, track, wall, see ya. He did it in style. He joins the 3,000 hit club with a home run.
Flores drives it, deep left center field. Taylor back, near the wall. It's out of here! Flores ends it with a home run! 2 nights ago, he thought he was traded. In tears on the field, he gets his 4th standing ovation of the night as he ends it with a long ball.
And maybe tears of joy now.
All right, it's been a couple of weeks, but This Week in Sports returns. I am your host, Matt O'Leary, and we have a lot to talk about today, which is kind of surprising because this is kind of like the dead period of sports. You're in between, football and baseball, but March Madness is happening right now, and although I am not a big basketball fan, or really a college basketball fan, I'm going to have to talk about it a little bit today because there were some locals involved, and there were some intriguing storylines. We also have, some NFL free agency, which was going off the last couple of weeks. I missed the last couple of weeks, but I am back today, so we do have a lot to talk about, and, let's just jump right into it with this college basketball. 2 big local stories for us here in Long Island, especially. First, Stony Brook making the NCAA tournament for the first time in school history. An absolute, congratulations to them. Unfortunately, they got knocked out last night. They were going up against the number 4 seeded Kentucky. And listen, Kentucky, that what they're going to do. They are a real solid college basketball program, and they're expected to go far. Stony Brook was big-time underdog, but you have to look at the positive, that they made it to the tournament, and you just take it like that, because they've never done it in school history. It was the first time in school history that they ever made the tournament, which is a huge deal. I know a lot of people on the island were watching this game. I know a lot of people were watching the previous game, hoping that they would get into the tournament, which they did, and they went up against a real quality opponent. They lost to a quality opponent, and they were big-time underdogs in this game. So when you look at it from that aspect, you could definitely say, all right, we went out against a team that was definitely better than us, and it was a great run. We got to the tournament. We're taking steps in the right direction for our college basketball program. And Stony Brook, in my opinion, is able to say that, and like I've been saying, good for them. For just making the tournament. It's a big step for them, and maybe they could build off of this for the future and possibly get back there next year as well. But that was I think most people on Long Island, especially further out east, was definitely tried staying up to watch that game last night, and they were rooting for Stony Brook to maybe pull the upset. And it was a long shot. It really was a long shot. I wasn't expecting them to. I obviously wanted them to win the game, but I wasn't expecting them to upset Kentucky. They were just too good of a basketball program, and they were outmatched. But it's not a disappointing loss. It really isn't, because they probably weren't even supposed to be in this position. So if you look at it from that way, you can just take the positive side. It makes it so much easier for you as a sports fan. I know I'm very hypocritical talking about this, but if you take the positive route and you take the high road, it makes it a lot easier on yourself. And if you're a Stony Brook college basketball fan, just think of, we made the tournament. How many eyeballs were on our program? Because how much airtime do they really get during the regular season? How much recognition do they get during the regular season? Very little, if any at all. And a lot of people from around the country are watching you guys play on a Thursday night on CBS. That's a big time deal. Good for Stony Brook. and I'm happy that they made the tournament. The other big local school that made it, Seton Hall, a Jersey school, but I still consider them local. I know a couple of people who go to Seton Hall, so I was excited to see them in the NCAA tournament. It was the first time they made the tournament in like 10 years, and they won the Big East for the first time in like 20, and that's a big deal. They upset a couple of very good teams in Villanova and Xavier along the way, and again, like Stony Brook, it was unexpected for them to do so well, and they ended up being a 6th seed in the tournament, and there was a little bit of questioning whether they should have been a higher seed because they won the Big East. And I think a lot of people were thinking that they were going to either be a 4 or a 5 seed. And they ended up losing last night to Gonzaga. So the question to me for them is, did they get gypped because they didn't get a higher seed? Because you're probably more likely, if you're a 4 seed, to win your game because you're facing a lower seed. So you got to keep that into consideration. Also, I didn't think it was fair. They're playing in Denver, and their game didn't start till like 10:40 East Coast time. So that, and the altitude that they're not used to. I know that their star player Whitehead was saying that was a little bit of a factor in the game. He wasn't making it an excuse, but he said it did play a role. And I think playing at the late time probably played a role as well. That one is probably the more disappointing loss of the two, although that Stony Brook, they really weren't expected to win their game. At least, for Seton Hall, they were the 6th seed. So they were the higher seed and ended up losing. But I know a lot of people in their brackets were taking Gonzaga over Seton Hall. I just thought it was an interesting story. I think most of the people in the community, and since I know people who go to Seton Hall, I think that they were looking to see them go far. And it was a nice story. They won the Big East, and that wasn't expected to happen. So you got to, again, like Stony Brook, look at the positive. This wasn't expected, and hopefully your star player Whitehead comes back for next year and doesn't enter the NBA draft. A lot of people are saying that he is expected to come back next year, and hopefully he does. And it's just another step in the right direction. All that Stony Brook and Seton Hall, and for realistically all the teams that got knocked out yesterday, what you got to do is make it a stepping stone. Don't make it something that ruins your season. For example, we're going to talk about the Baylor game and Yale. And although Baylor was a 5 seed and lost, which is the 12 upsetting the 5 seems to always happen. It also happened in the Little Rock game, but that was a very interesting game. I watched the end of that game, and I'm got to be honest with you guys, I don't really watch a lot of college basketball, but I found myself getting an interest in that game down the stretch of that game, and as time was running out. And I just think that here's the deal. All right. Here's the deal. If you were getting upset and in a big way, like Baylor was there last year and got upset, so that might be a little bit more of being stagnant because you didn't take the next step. These like Seton Hall, who hasn't made the tournament in years, and Stony Brook, who hasn't made it ever, this can be looked at as a stepping stone. Now, if the same thing happens next year, if Stony Brook gets a higher seed, or if Seton Hall wins the Big East again and then they get bumped in the first round once again, now you got yourself a little bit of a story. That's the story. Baylor is that negative story right now. These other teams aren't. The Yale-Baylor game was very interesting to me. I like watching underdogs, as you guys can tell. I'm a Jets, Islanders, and Mets fan. The 12 upsetting the 5. Very, it seems to happen every year in these brackets and in this March Madness. But I just found that game especially intriguing. And I think, as we go further along, the games are going to be interesting as well. I think it's just that there's like so many games right now, which makes it so much fun. Because I think as time goes on, when you get to the Elite Eight and the Final Four, although you usually have like really good matchups and quality basketball games, I think half the fun is seeing these upsets, like Yale, who hasn't made the tournament in God knows how long, upsetting Baylor. Like these big time upsets is always fun to watch, and there's just so many games going on all at once. So you could be flipping around to games. Oh, this game's into double overtime. That's what happened in the Little Rock game. They went to double overtime, and one of their guys, I'm blanking on his name, hit a big time three at the end of regulation to send it to overtime. It was big. I've said it before on the radio program. I'm not a big basketball guy, but I got to give the NCAA credit. They pulled me in a little bit yesterday. Granted, I watched my Islanders last night instead of some of the other games, but before the Islanders came on, let me tell you, I was into this college basketball. I was going to flip through between Seton Hall and Stony Brook last night after the Islanders game, but I ended up just calling it a night after that. We'll see, though. I mean, listen, it's kind of difficult for me to talk about college basketball because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not an expert, but this is the big story right now, so this is something that we got to talk about. And, it is interesting. If you guys aren't huge college basketball guys or just basketball fans in general, I think you could still find an interest in some of these games. And the reason behind it is all these brackets. Because if you look at who are watching these March Madness games, I would say probably only half the people are hardcore college basketball fans. The other half is guys who just filled out a bracket and wants to see their bracket do well. Or gamblers. But, I was interested in the games yesterday, and, certainly I think it will be interesting going forward. All right, when we come back, I want to talk about a big story this week. It wasn't a New York-related story, but Adam LaRoche retired from the Chicago White Sox, and his reasoning was a little different. Let's just put it that way. So stay tuned. Back after this. All right, so Adam LaRoche retired from Major League Baseball at the age of 36. And it wasn't because of injuries. It wasn't because he was necessarily just, okay, my body is done. I am done playing baseball. Adam LaRoche retired because the Chicago White Sox wouldn't allow his son, who is 14 years old, named Drake LaRoche, he wasn't going to be allowed in the locker room anymore. Now, before you just jump on the White Sox and say, what's wrong with having the kid in the locker room? Hang on. Wait a second. Supposedly, he was there 100% of the time in spring training, in the locker room, on the practice field, traveling with the team. Have you ever been in a locker room? And look, listen, I will never be in a major league locker room as a player. I played high school baseball. I was in a locker room. I know that the locker room is probably not really a good place for kids. It just isn't. It's not appropriate. The stuff that is being talked about, whether you want to think about it or want to hear about it or not, that's the reality of the situation. And it's a locker room. Guys are getting changed, everything like that. It's just weird that you have your kid there 100% of the time. I'm not saying that you could never bring your kid there. And like other people have talked about on sports radio, the ex-athletes, for example, Mike from Mike and Mike, You got Boomer saying that there were days where your family could come. Wednesday afternoon barbecue after practice, or Saturday mornings, or stuff like that. It would be family day. So I get that Adam LaRoche wants to spend more time with his kid. That's why I don't necessarily blame him for retiring. And I think that spending time with your children, obviously you can't blame him for that. Blame him for wanting to do that. But I just don't think that it's an appropriate situation to bring your kid every day. 'Cause in really what world, in the regular world, in what profession can you bring your child to work 100% of the time? Now maybe that's a little hypocritical of myself to say, because there has been days where I have went to work with both my mom, and I've worked with my dad as well, but it's not at 100% of the time. It's just an awkward situation. If you look at it from the other player's point of view, you got to filter yourself, and I don't know. I just feel like it's a distraction. How would you feel in your place of work? Because that's what it is. I mean, yeah, it's a sport. It's supposed to be a family thing. I get it, but it comes to a point what you've got to be in the way at some point. Especially if he's just, sitting there or doing, or just being there. If he has a job, like I know Barry Bonds' kid was a bat boy, that's one thing. But if he's just hanging out in the locker room all the time, I don't know. It's that's just weird to me. He wants to spend more time with his kid. That's why he retired. If that's what he wanted to do, I don't really blame him. They like to hunt together, so I guess they could do all the hunting in the world they want to right now. But it wasn't like the White Sox were banning LaRoche's kid for life. He was just saying that in the comment, it was saying that he's there 100% of the time. Can you just back it off a little bit? And he retired. He left $13 million on the table. I don't know. Maybe an extra $13 million might help your kid down the road, where, paying for college or paying for his children's college if he has kids. I don't know. I've heard some interesting takes on this. It just, to me, I guess, yeah, at 14 years old, you're probably like, oh yeah, I get to go to hang out with my dad at Major League Baseball at spring training. That's awesome, and I could see the appeal to it. But in another way, when is this kid going to school? And in this quote too, Adam LaRoche said that you can learn more in a Major League Baseball clubhouse than you can in a classroom. I don't ever recall talking about the Pythagorean theorem in a locker room. Locker room talk it's what you would, if you've never been in a locker room, it's probably what you think it would be, is what it is. So that doesn't make any sense. But it's tough because how can you fault the guy for wanting to spend more time with his kids? That's a really cool thing. He has made a decent amount of money. He has had a pretty nice career. But he's leaving money on the table, and I don't think it should have had to come to this. I'll say it like that. I don't think it should have had to come to Adam LaRoche retiring because they asked him if he could stop bringing his son there every single day. Weird story. I think that's a weird reason to retire, but what can you do? That's pretty much just my take on the topic. I've heard most people, I would say, for the majority, I think it's a little strange bringing a 14-year-old into a Major League Baseball locker room every day and having him at the facility every single day. He should probably go to school. That's probably where Drake LaRoche should be, is in the classroom. Okay, when we come back, we're going to transition, talk about the NFL free agency, because that's been absolutely ridiculous going off in the last couple of weeks. So back after this to talk about NFL free agency. All right, so the NFL free agency has been very interesting. It's only March, I know this, and the season just ended a month ago. But already, I am looking forward to the 2016 NFL season. Let's talk about the New York teams first, and then we will talk about the rest of the league. The Giants signed many guys on the defensive side of the football. Notably, Sheldon Richards, Damon Harrison, too many defensive linemen. Damon Harrison, formerly of the New York Jets. And, from the Jets standpoint, wanted to bring them back. We'll get to why they couldn't bring him back. But he's a good fit for them defensively. The Giants have a lot of cap room, while the Jets don't have a lot of cap room. So it's really been two different stories right here in New York in the NFL free agency. But I think both teams have done well in free agency so far this year. Giants definitely improved on the defensive side of the football. You know that the offense is going to be their strong point, obviously. Victor Cruz took a pay cut to stay with the team. I think that's huge for the Giants because as great as Odell Beckham Jr. is, Ruben Randle is pretty inconsistent. And I think everyone really wanted to see this Victor Cruz, Odell Beckham tandem, and it hasn't happened yet. Victor Cruz missed all last year. And the year before, he only played a handful of games because he got hurt. And Odell missed the first, 4 games or so the 2014 season. So what the Giants had to do was go out and spend money on defense. And that's what they did. They have a completely revamped defense. I think that they've definitely improved. The only thing is it enough? And with rookie head coach Ben McAdoo, how is he gonna handle being a head coach for the first time in the National Football League? I think they have improved. It's way too early to make any kind of predictions or stuff like that for the season, but I think that they will improve over last year. Are they a playoff team? Maybe. Borderline. The NFC East seems to still be wide open. But the Giants, they're taking steps in the right direction. The only weird story that's coming out of the Giants is that Tom Coughlin is still showing up to the facility. He just can't let go. You feel bad for the guy. I've said it on here before. It's going to be tough to part ways with the coach that you had for 12 years and that's won you 2 championships. And he's obviously not taking it very well if he's still showing up to the facility on a daily basis. I was intrigued to see that, this is weeks ago by this point, but that he did interview for other head coaching positions like in Philadelphia. But I think that would have been just too weird for him. The fact that he still shows up to the Giants facility is mind-boggling to me because you got to let Ben McAdoo coach the team now that he's the head coach, obviously. So I don't know how that's going to have an effect on this team. If guys are going to be all in for McAdoo or, Tom Coughlin's still showing up to the facility every day, so our allegiance is still to him. The thing is, the Giants they don't seem like that kind of franchise. They handle things well for the most part. So I think that they'll probably figure it out. Maybe they'll change the locks on the doors so Tom Coughlin doesn't have a key to get in. That was just, I don't know. I just found that funny. While the Jets, like I said, they don't have a lot of cap space. So they lost Damon Harrison, not Sheldon Richardson, making that clear. to the Giants in free agency. They cut Antonio Cromartie, cut Jeremy Curley, lost Chris Ivory, but they did add some people and re-signed some people. Bilal Powell back. They signed Matt Forte, which in reality I think is an upgrade over Chris Ivory, because Chris Ivory got off to a very, very good start to last season. Was one of the best running backs in the league in the first few weeks. Then got banged up and went really, really slow down the stretch to the point where he only got 6 carries in the last game of the season. A win and you're in game in Buffalo. Chris Ivory's only getting the ball 6 times. And here's the thing. The Jets don't have a lot of money to spend. And this is where the Ryan Fitzpatrick and New York Jets controversy comes into play. Fitzpatrick wants Sam Bradford-like money, $18 million a year. The Jets want to pay him $7 million, which is what Chase Daniel got to be the backup to Sam Bradford in Philadelphia. Clearly they are far apart right now, but the positive for the Jets is there isn't a huge market for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Where is he going to go to be a starting quarterback? The only other possible option that makes sense to me is the Denver Broncos. But similar to the Jets, they have guys taking pay cuts because they too have cap problems. They couldn't bring in the quarterback that they wanted to take over for Peyton Manning. Brock Osweiler left for the Houston Texans and $17 million a year. Insanity from the Houston Texans, but maybe they finally got a quarterback and that'll put them over the top to win the AFC South. But the thing with Ryan Fitzpatrick, as much anxiety as it's caused me because I want Ryan Fitzpatrick to re-sign with the Jets, and I'll give my spiel why after I finish explaining the whole situation, the Jets are actually handling this kind of well because they're only really bidding with themselves. So once Ryan Fitzpatrick's camp realizes, hey, the only real option is with the Jets, and they don't want to pay us $18 million, they're going to have to take a lot less money. I have said all along, I think he is in from that $10 to $12 million range at quarterback. I think it will fall to somewhere in between that. 7 is too low. I understand Ryan Fitzpatrick not wanting to sign a $7 million contract. But the Jets don't have a lot of money to spend. That is why they are playing hardball with Ryan Fitzpatrick. My issue with it is I do not want to see this football team turned over or returned to Geno Smith. He has shown me time and time again that he cannot handle the National Football League. In his one game that he played this year, he tried to force the ball down the field, and listen, sometimes Ryan Fitzpatrick falls into that category, but at least Ryan Fitzpatrick has some pocket presence and some football IQ. Geno Smith is going to run out of bounds for a loss instead of throwing the football away. He's going to force the ball downfield. He is going to take a monster hit on the sideline and get himself hurt, and then Ryan Fitzpatrick had to come back into the game. He looked terrible in Oakland. Terrible. He has shown some flashes, mostly against the Miami Dolphins in his hometown. So if he wants to go play for the Miami Dolphins because Ryan Tannehill, they're not sold on Ryan Tannehill, go play for Miami then. I don't want to hand the keys back over to Geno Smith because he never won the job in the first place. In 2013, Mark Sanchez got injured. He was going to be the starting quarterback to start the year. Geno Smith was not having a good preseason, but Rex Ryan put Mark Sanchez into the game in the fourth quarter with a weak offensive line, and the Giants injured Mark Sanchez and ended his tenure with the New York Jets. Then enter Geno Smith. He goes 8-8 his first year. He has a rookie-like season, ups and downs like a rookie-like season, like an 8-8 season. Then in 2014, absolutely implodes, was awful. The Jets have a terrible year. Rex Ryan gets fired. They bring in a new general manager, bring in a new head coach, bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick to back up Geno Smith, and Geno Smith is once again going to be named the starting quarterback to start the 2015 season after, yet again, never winning the job, and he gets himself knocked out. He gets punched in the jaw, and thank you, IKN and Polly, for exposing Ryan Fitzpatrick as the starting quarterback of the New York Jets. Because I'm not saying that Ryan Fitzpatrick is the perfect quarterback, but the Jets are able to win with him. They won 10 games. They overachieved. They realistically probably should have won 11 and went to the playoffs. And the reason why they didn't go to the playoffs was not Ryan Fitzpatrick. The thing that frustrates me the most is that the fans only remember Week 17. What about the previous 16 weeks where Ryan Fitzpatrick single-handedly led the Jets into that position they were in to get into the win-and-in situation? Look, single-handedly might be a bad word to describe the situation because Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker had phenomenal years. But if anybody else is playing the quarterback position, if Geno Smith is playing the quarterback position, the Jets are not going 10-6. They're probably going a reverse 6-10. Bryce Petty, I don't think, is ready to take over for this team. You can't forget the 31 touchdown passes. It's a franchise record. Ryan Fitzpatrick set franchise records last year, and everyone's ready to throw him to the curb and give the keys back to Geno Smith or to Bryce Petty, who is still a project. You want to sign Fitzpatrick for two or 3 years, maybe. Let Petty develop some more and then have him start? Fine. I'm all for that. But the Jets, besides the quarterback position, are in a win-now mode. They're a more veteran team. And you're going to give the keys to either Geno Smith, who is very inconsistent, or a quarterback who is not ready in Bryce Petty, or, get this, Robert Griffin III. RG3. He had a good rookie season in 2012. Blew out an ACL in a playoff game against the Seahawks. And then the NFL figured out the read option. Robert Griffin III, Colin Kaepernick, even Russell Wilson, who learned to change his game and become a better pocket passer, but they figured out the read option. Russell Wilson changed his game. Colin Kaepernick and RG3 couldn't. And that's why they are both in a position where they're looking for new teams. And I do not want to take a project like Robert Griffin III in a win-now mode. It doesn't make sense. The Denver Broncos just won the Super Bowl with a quarterback who was below average in Peyton Manning. Listen, I am not knocking Peyton Manning's career. He had a great career, but you're flat out lying if you're going to sit here and argue with me and tell me that Peyton Manning had a better year than Ryan Fitzpatrick. You would be wrong. You can still win in this league with a great defense and just an average quarterback. And it's frustrating to see the Jets possibly moving away from this. All right, I just had to vent a little bit. This whole thing is giving me anxiety. They probably will end up bringing him back, but it would be so Jets to move on from Fitzpatrick, and everyone would be happy. And then he would go to Denver, and they'd go win back-to-back Super Bowls. Unbelievable. All right, when we come back, we're going to transition, talk a little baseball, and wrap it up with a little bit of hockey talk. Back after this. All right, we're back. We're going to transition now and talk a little bit of baseball here on This Week in Sports. The Mets ended up deciding to cut Ruben Tejada. And listen, he's been average or okay in the field. I get that. He has had a couple of clutch hits along the way, but he's a very replaceable piece. And I think the Mets are looking to promote Matt Reynolds. I thought that Matt Reynolds should have made the team last year. And I think that they do have a little bit of depth at this position, although shortstop is probably a weaker position on the Mets, and Asdrubal Cabrera is hurt. But I do think that between Wilmer, Asdrubal, and Reynolds, you got a pretty nice shortstop like situation going on. And, with Reynolds, he could play second. Yeah, Todd could play second too. But I could see him playing second and third as well. Because, Wright is probably playing only 130 games maybe if we're lucky. So we got to see, who's going to be playing third. Probably some Wilmer, maybe some Matt Reynolds, maybe some Eric Campbell. So, is it a bad move? No, I don't think it's a really bad move. I don't think it's going to have a huge effect on the team. It was the second longest tenured Met at this point. In 2010, I think it was when he came up. The first is obviously Wright, then it was him. So that's the one thing that you're getting rid of as a tenured guy. But the Mets they're trying to win championships. They're trying to win a championship. And I don't think Ruben Tejada is going to be the difference. I don't think Ruben Tejada is a guy who's going to put them over the top to win a championship. He's a replaceable piece, and I think if they believe that Matt Reynolds or Dilson Herrera are ready and they want to go in that direction, that's fine. They can do that. As for the Yankees, Starlin Castro hit a home run the other day, and I really liked that acquisition. I was saying it when they made the trade. Definitely excited to see for the Yankees where they're going to put him in the order and how he's going to do. The thing that concerns me, obviously, with the Yankees is the starting pitching and the age. They're waiting for contracts to expire, unfortunately, in guys like Beltran and Teixeira. Obviously, with Greg Bird hurt, the Teixeira one doesn't really hurt as much as it would have if Bird was healthy. And also, this kid, Judge, want to see him get called up at some point during the season. He's a big right-handed bat with some power. If you're a Yankee fan, I'd be excited about the Greg Bird and Aaron Judges of the world. I really would be. So that's heating up. Next week we don't have a show because we're on spring break. So I'll do my baseball preview show the following week, April 1st. So that I'm going to dive into more baseball, do more predictions and stuff like that. We're just talking about the stories right now. Mets named Matt Harvey as the opening day starter yesterday. That was told by Adam Rubin on Twitter. That's how we found out here. This is not surprising. I think he deserves the baseball. Listen, he was on the mound in Game 5. He went out to the mound to try to finish off Game 5. He deserves to get the baseball. And DeGrom is also expecting to have a kid somewhere around that time. So it's probably going to be Harvey, Game 1, and then possibly Syndergaard. That's who I would want to see. I would want to see those two back-to-back. You guys know that Syndergaard's my favorite, although I love all of them. And how could you not? Syndergaard after the 60 feet 6 inches comment, and Matt Harvey after that Game 5. That's nice. That's good storylines. And listen, the Mets are going to have to watch the banner being raised one night and then the ring ceremonies the next night. That's got to motivate this team. It really has to light a fire under them. It does. gets me all amped up just thinking about it. This has to motivate the team. They could say, hey, the Royals were in our position last year. Let's go out and let's be the Royals this year. That's what I want to see from this team. I want to see them motivated. And I think Harvey deserves the baseball. I do. And could you really go wrong with giving the ball to any one of those guys? No. I cannot wait for New York Mets baseball. I'm a Mets fan, but I will talk to you about the Yankees. I'm a Jets fan, but I will talk to you about the Giants. And I'm an Islanders fan, which we're going to talk about in a second, but I will talk to you about the Rangers. I'm excited for Mets baseball. I'm just excited for baseball to be back in general. Springtime, which leads to summertime. It's all good. And talk about the spring leading into the summer. Talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs. And the race for the playoffs is heating up, especially in the Metropolitan Division. The Washington Capitals already clinched. They're the clear favorites in the East, but the Islanders, Rangers, and Penguins are all really close in the standings, fighting for playoff position. The Rangers won last night, which would put... the Rangers lost, in overtime. So they got 1 point, was what I was trying to say. So they have a 3-point lead on the Islanders, who lost to Nashville last night. And the Penguins are only 1 point behind the Islanders. So the difference between having home ice in the first round against the 3 seed and the difference of being the wild card team possibly headed to the Capitals is 4 points. It's a deadlock down the stretch. And to be honest with you, the Penguins seem to be a little hot right now. Rangers and Islanders sputtering. I predicted that it would be Capitals 1, Rangers 2, Islanders 3 before the season started. But is it going to turn out that way? I don't know. For the Islanders' point of view, it's scary that you lost Yaroslav Halak for 6 weeks. Maybe get him back for the playoffs, but you got to get there first. Greiss, I think, is a good quality backup, and I like Baribe too, but he's not Halak level. And although there was controversy all year long about who the starting goalie should be, I think that really it was Yaroslav Halak, and the way he played last year in that Capital series, he came up big time for the Islanders. Although they lost in 7, that's the thing. For the Rangers, you got to think that they're going to turn it on eventually. They seem to always do. Once you get to the playoffs, the lucky thing for the Rangers is they have Henrik Lundqvist, and we all know what they are capable of. But it comes to a point in time when how many years in a row can you go without, finishing it and winning a cup? Because, look, they've contended for 5 years in a row. I would love it if my team contended for 5 years in a row as well, but it takes a toll on you not winning. It does. And you don't want that. Things have changed for the Rangers. Brad Richards, gone. Ryan Callahan, gone. Hagelin, gone. Marty St. Louis, gone. Things are starting to change over a little bit. I think more pressure is on the Rangers to finish the job. I think it's going to be harder for them to win the Cup, especially getting out of the East with the Capitals, especially those West Coast teams, the Kings, the Blackhawks, Stars. So I think there is more pressure on the Rangers, although there's a lot of pressure on the Islanders too, because they got to get out of the first round one of these years. I think a first-round matchup of Rangers-Islanders would be good for the city. I do. I think it would bring a big-time rivalry back to hockey, and I think it would, give hockey a little bit of a name, get them a little airplay. You guys know that I like hockey. I'm a hockey guy, so I think that point would definitely be intriguing. But it's going to be fun. Hopefully, it turns out to be that. It's going to be a fight, and don't count out the Flyers too. So none of this is set in stone yet for the NHL playoffs. And that's what makes it so much fun. And what makes it fun, too, is you don't even have to be a top seed. You can get hot at the right time. Look at the Kings when they won their first Stanley Cup, in 20, a few years ago, 2012. They were an 8 seed. They got hot at the right time. It doesn't matter. It's not like in basketball where we know it's going to be the Golden State Warriors against the Cleveland Cavaliers. We don't know. That's half the fun. That's going to do it for this week in sports. I'm your host, Matt O'Leary. Not on next week. Next week is spring break, but the following Friday, which is April 1st, I will be back on for a Major League Baseball preview. Till then, everyone stay safe, have a nice spring break, and I'll see you guys then.